Hi, I'm Rachel, teacher, healer, and modern mystic. And this evening we have got my Friday Night Live. I am joined by Sabine, who is either on one of these sides. I can never tell if it's mirrored or not, on which side I should be pointing at. And we this evening are talking about the Lillith Shift, which is something I was energetically aware of, and then Sabine has spoken about astrologically. So what I thought would be a really good idea, because this stuff is important, is for us to look at it from an astrological perspective. I'll get Sabine to talk in a moment, and also talk about it from a spiritual point of view. I have had a reading with Sabine. She's amazing. She is an AstroCoach. So if you're looking for anything astrological, she can tell you a little bit more about what she does, and then we can have a chat about what we want to this evening. Tell me what an AstroCoach is, please, Sabine.
Originally, I'm a Gestalt therapist. So I come from a humanistic psychotherapy background, and a couple of years ago, I had like my spiritual wake-up call. And right after that, I got in contact with astrology, and it hooked me right away. And I'm just, when I'm hooked by something, I just start digging and digging and digging. And I found astrology to be my most favorite tool, because it never bores me, because there's so many angles you can look at it. There's always something you can learn more. So yeah. I've been studying it for, I don't know, 6 years now. And now I am officially starting to work as an AstroCoach, where I want to combine the insights you can get from astrology with coaching tools.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So what I like about the astrology is that you can go to the roots of the issues quite quickly. You can identify the areas. Whereas in regular therapy, you have to, do your research and lots of talking. So I prefer the quick way, and then of course deepen it later. So
which is perfect. Sounds perfect. Love that combination. It sounds right up my street. Now, with regard to the Lillith Shift, let us know on the comments if you've noticed any of this stuff coming up in your life, and how it's manifested in your life, or how you've seen it. But Sabine, do you want to tell me a little bit astrologically about what you've observed, and where you think that's kind of pushing things, and how it's creating the current shift that it is?
It's quite funny. For the preparation of this talk tonight, I looked up some things, and just today I found it's only been July last year that I found the key to Lilith. I knew she was in my chart, but I didn't understand her. And it was at that time, so not too long ago, that someone gave me the clue to decipher her, and that was like a massive door opening and understanding. I would re-look at old charts, and I was going like, oh wow, that makes so much sense, because in my therapeutic life, I've done lots and lots of research on trauma. And the clue, the key I received was translating Lilith in a chart as trauma. And now I might add female trauma. So that was my starting point. And then I got really curious. And in the last couple of weeks, it has become a massive topic among my spiritual friends. Like we have all been working on stuff like this, like healing on the female side, and it kind of just built up. So I didn't quite remember exactly how and when the whole Lilith thing started astrologically. Oh, and I might add, I'm working with Black Moon Lilith. Okay, because there's also an asteroid, so there's quite confusion in the astrology, but this is what I'm working with, and this is what I found. And this is mind-blowing. On 21st of December, 2020, we had this conjunction, this meeting of the big two boys, Jupiter and Saturn, you know, the prize star thing, the Christmas star thing that we're talking about, right in the beginning of Aquarius, the new energy. And when I looked it up yesterday, I found that Lilith was in a meeting with Uranus the same day.
Wow.
Now, what is Uranus? Uranus is the liberator. Uranus is the first planet we can't see with the naked eye, so it goes into the metaphysical, and he is very much the liberator.
Mm.
So that was the kickstart, like the Christmas star in combination with liberation of Lilith was like the start of the firework. And it was calm for a while. You know, Lilith was having several contacts and, you know, just everyday kind of stuff. And then, what is it, 28th today? So 8 days ago, on the 20th of May, we had a new moon with Lilith. So we had a sun-moon conjunction, which is a new moon, plus Lilith. 26, we had the total lunar eclipse, which kind of like activated the whole thing. And there's very positive energy at the moment because the sun, which, you know, illuminates things, which shines light on our consciousness, moves towards the north node at the moment. And this is about how we create our future and our mission. So all this together, I feel, has been like a domino effect, kind of starting it in December and then going forward. And now with the new moon and the sun illuminating it, it feels like it has come up massively. And yeah.
No, I was going to say, it really feels like there has been a massive shift. I don't know if anyone else felt things around the December time, around that Christmas time with that Christmas star. And that's really fascinating because for me, that's that whole thing about, you know, whether it's a pagan belief or whether it's a Christian belief, that's the belief is about the sun, the illumination of the sun and the sun coming, and the fact that there's a Lilith energy which has stepped into that, and actually like a wounded female, a very different energy has stepped into that and has been liberated as part of that whole process, is fascinating. And we think about how much has been going on, and all of these big shifts. And then over the last couple of weeks, I don't know if anyone else has found it, but all of these big astrological events that are happening really close to our planet, especially when you think about the effect on the moon and things like that. These are major things that are happening to us. I've just found it's the last couple of weeks is starting to kind of ease now. I'm waiting for it to blow up my face again now that I've said that. But over the last couple of weeks, it's been really quite strong in terms of everything that's going on around. For me, you can let us know in just a second what Lilith means for you and what else you kind of think that this is going through. But when we think about Lilith from a goddess point of view, which absolutely will have an influence on what we're talking about, Lilith is the original Eve. She's the original goddess who was painted as a femme fatale, and I really hate that phrase. And if anyone's read any of my blogs recently, you'll see that I really hate that phrase, because actually what we're looking at here is a shift for women to be able to ask for what they want, get what they want, and not be painted as being manipulative, or that there's something wrong with them, or they must want it for ill-gotten gains. And I found it coming up synchronistically through a lot of the work that I've been doing, and also in my real life. I make a very good job of creating a reality around me which contains other people, particularly people coming in on the female vibration. And I think we're probably all in agreement that female doesn't mean female necessarily. It means anyone who's coming in with that female energy, coming in, pushing the boundaries for women in whichever way that looks. I think that it's, I try to create a reality where other women and people within that energy are very collaborative, very supportive, because I'm looking to create my own utopia. I'm looking to create my own nirvana in which to live, and that doesn't mean it's a perfect world. That means it's as bloody perfect as we can get it on the earth plane. And I've been reminded quite sharply over the last couple of weeks that not everyone lives in that reality, and there are people outside of that reality who are coming quite hard to really shake me up and to go, no, this shit is still here. This stuff, all of this crap is still outside of here. And it's made it a really difficult last couple of weeks, in all honesty. Everything, when it kind of feels like everything's outside, like you're kind of being bombarded with things. And for me, it was a real message that this isn't just for me to carry on creating my own reality, that this is something that really needs to be spoken about, so that if everyone's creating their own reality around this, we're affecting more and more people within that direct reality. And some people who have jarred against it, they might get changed by some of the things I've said to them. Some of them may never want to speak to me again, and both of those things are exactly as they're supposed to. But it's just been, I've had some really horrendous incidents actually over the last couple of weeks, which it's just crazy. Oh, I don't know about yourself, Sabine.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I had a clash a couple of days ago, and as it is my, just my way of dealing with it, I looked up the charts with this person, and we had 2 Lilith aspects in 2 directions with Saturn involved. Saturn is always the restrictor. And we had 2 Chirons and 1 Mars involved. So Chiron is more of the male wound, and Mars is aggression. So we had like 5 buttons or 6 buttons pressed at the same time, and that was big time. That was really big time. And that's the thing about Lilith, with all astrological energy or archetype. You have the black side and the white side, and the unhealed Lilith is a bitch.
Yeah,
very revengeful. Can be sadistic, very hurtful, controlling. So a very Scorpio, and her color, like her symbol, is also black, and she's called Black Moon. So it's very much about shadow work. And if you don't acknowledge the shadow, it controls you. And if you shine light on it, then it can heal.
Absolutely. Shadow work's come up so much over the last couple of weeks, again in group discussions, and when we look at shadow work, what we're looking at is understanding that those parts of ourselves that we don't like, that are disabling, that are dark, that we'd maybe rather ignore, those are actually, when we listen to them, when we don't react but try to understand them, when we look for where they're drawing us, they're actually really empowering. Why have I reacted so badly to that? Why in my head has that triggered me in such a way? Why do I feel the need to act so irrationally? Oh, okay. Or maybe why did I react so irrationally? Okay, this has come up for me. I need to do some healing work around this. And actually, when we do that healing work, it's showing us where our passion lies, where particularly with Lilith, where our path lies. As you were saying before, this life mission, what we've come here to do, where does my passion lie? Where all of our passion lies is our life mission, is what we're supposed to be doing. And simply by following our hearts and our souls and doing what we love, what we're going to find is that we're doing what we've come here to do. So it's simpler than we think it is. It doesn't need to be, what do I need to do when, and all the rest of it. We just need to follow our heart. And when you're empowered and when you're working with that shadow side of yourself, which goes, oh, why are you jealous of that? Or why has that made you angry? Or why has that upset you? Why have you reacted maybe even passively aggressively towards something, which, you know, our shadow side can be passive as well as aggressive. What we'll find is that we're empowered empaths, empowered female vibration, with that emotion, where we're actually able to enable emotion and balance within the world. And that's what we're here to do in a whole load of varying ways.
Yeah. And that's interesting because you were speaking about emotions, and it's like moon Lilith, and the moon represents the emotions. So it's very much about emotional work. And I also found that triggers are our highest spiritual teachers, because they're like alarms going on, like there's something wrong. And the art is really to first understand how a trigger works, that we get into this alert, fight or flight, we can't think properly anymore, and then learn how to calm ourselves down, and then, you know, step back and not react, but rather think or feel and think, and then act. And it's this moment in between trigger and direct reaction, or trigger, integration, and then reaction, which makes the whole difference.
Absolutely. It's something I've been talking about a lot recently, which is knowing what your triggers are, knowing what your fight or flight is. Is it fight? Is it flight? Is it fawn? Is it flop? What is your reaction? What is your normal reaction, which says that there's a problem? And for a lot of us, we're going to find that different reactions actually relate into different protective mechanisms that we've put in place at different points in our lives for different things. And what's really interesting is that one of the major protection mechanisms that we put in place is fawning. And as women, that's the I need to pacify the situation. I'm scared. So what do I do to make this situation safe? By being pretty, or by being sweet, or by being nice? How do I placate this situation? Because I can't physically get out of this situation. What do I do to win this situation and turn the situation around? And actually, it's a massive talent. It's a massive diplomatic talent that many women, men do as well, but many women have. And women are the more natural political beings because of this diplomacy, because of this ability to, and I hate the word charm, and I've had that used around me a lot over the years, and I've never tried to charm anyone. I've only ever tried to be myself. And if that means I'm polite and I'm diplomatic, then you know what, those are major talents. So, you know, if you find yourself sort of falling into too many of these triggers, and you find yourself constantly having to placate people, why is that? Why are you constantly having to placate people? Is there a problem with the dynamic within that relationship? Is there an issue with how you're reacting to stuff, or how you're viewing things, or whatever it is? And then you go through your healing process, and you look at your healing process, because this really is a time now for the emotional wounds to be healed on a really, really deep level. I think it's, you know, when women look at how we haven't been able to maybe own, or we've had to fight over jobs, and there's a massive competition issue still between women. There's massive competition issues, and I see it all the time, where people are really, really nice to your face, and then they go away and, you know, they say things to clients, and it's unbelievable the stuff that we do, because it's so ingrained in us to behave in a way where we win the best man, because for the past few thousand years, women weren't able to own their own property, have their own name. They weren't able to, you know, earn money, a whole host of things which we couldn't do. And we developed strategies in order to cope with that. So a lot of this isn't just strategies that we've personally put in place as children. These are strategies that have been put in place generationally. So we're looking at massive matriarchal wounds as well, coming in.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I found out something only yesterday while doing my research. I hadn't been aware of this. Every planet, or in this case, theoretical point, has got an orbit, like a time, certain time it takes to go around the sun. And I was wondering how long Lilith takes, and I found out she takes 9 years for one circle.
Wow.
Which means 9 months in one sign. What has come up for me too lately was the topic of the womb. Now, 9 months, pregnancy, womb. And then when we relate it to the female wound and what you've just said, we have been reduced in many cultural, situations to just be the womb, be the servant for pleasure, being the one who produces the children. And Lilith has a very strong warrior energy, like almost Amazon. Is the Amazon female? Is that what? So there's some
like Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman type energy.
Yeah. So Lilith has a very highly sexual side. So if we take back our abused sexual creative energy and decide to own it once again and use it in our best interest, then much healing can happen. And a healed Lilith energy is so powerful because she also embraces, the black area of the shades, and she doesn't need to shy away from it. So she can be very confrontational, but also in a healing way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when we look at a lot of the goddesses which bring about balance, and people like Sekhmet and Kali, they're here to bring balance. They're not soft. They're not, they will say what they need to say with love, but it's direct. And we shy so far away from directness and from honesty that many of us struggle with that. So when you've got a woman who says directly, without being a bitch, a lot of us don't know how to interpret that, and then it gets transferred into she is a bitch, when actually it's about directness and it's about honesty, and only through that honest communication can we hear other people's opinions, and can we respond and have open and good communication. And the more people that own this, the more women that own this, the more problems that get solved, because we're directly communicating. Things aren't being left and pushed to one side. The problems are actually getting sorted. What you said actually totally makes sense with the Lilith energy, in terms of following our life's mission and using that creative energy in order to manifest our life path. If we're putting that energy into making babies, and nothing wrong with making babies, I've made my own babies, that's not to say that you can't use that energy for that purpose. But when women are like my own grandmother, my mum's family worked out my grandmother, she didn't get married until she was 28, which was really old for Ireland. Because she came over to this country and spent, I think, about 10 years having fun till she came home. And she had, they think, 18 pregnancies, 11 full-term, 10 surviving children, through to childhood and beyond. So she was putting out a baby every 18 months minimally. And one time she didn't put out a baby in 1 year. She'd had a couple of miscarriages they worked out. And she went to see the priest, and the priest refused to give her confession because she hadn't had a baby that month. So you think about how women's energy was channeled into making babies. And rather than being channeled into something else, whatever else it is that my grandmother might have been absolutely amazing at, because you know, she wasn't a standard mother. She wasn't a at-home cookie. That was actually my grandfather's role before he passed, was the cooking and the cleaning, and that was his role. So, you know, whatever it was that she probably would have been amazing at, she wasn't able to do. And I think it's a pertinent subject for me because I had massive gynecological issues and really struggled to have children. And those conversations that I remember having with people before and at the time and since about when you get married, the first thing that people say is, oh, so when are you going to have kids? You're going to have kids now? And A, it's a really personal question. And B, why do you presume that somebody's going to have kids? Why do you presume that they're gonna have children? And I know a lot of people who have been loud and proud about making conscious decisions about the fact that they don't want kids. And that's actually a really powerful statement to make. And for me, very much resonates when it comes to especially women and men as well, but is that high priestess energy, the high priestess who actually would have dedicated her life to her work, whatever that work was. She would have been provided for, she would have been looked after, she would have been looked up to, she would have been revered within the circles. I think there's a wounded high priestess within many of us, which absolutely comes in that Lilith vibration where, you know, if you've got a powerful being, somebody who's naturally powerful, and you squash and crush that naturally powerful being, as you say, it's that temper, it's that anger, it's that vengeful side which comes out instead. And I think that many of us still hold that wound. And I think that even if it doesn't feel like a priestess wound, it absolutely is a priestess wound, because, you know, that you think about an emperor being knocked off his perch, exactly the same thing is going to happen with a high priestess or an empress being knocked off her perch and being subjugated and being stopped from doing what it is that she's meant to do. And I see that a lot in client work, is that this high priestess energy wanting to come through but stuck underneath this massive female wound.
It's quite fascinating. It can also relate or point to very specific traumas people can have suffered in the womb. I've had 2 clients lately. One was disabled because part of his fingers and toes had been like crushed from the, what's it called, from the
umbilical cords.
Yeah. So he lost those. Another one, a woman told me there were, I guess, two of her children had it wrapped around their necks, and they both had very strong Lilith placements. And I just told her, this is, you know, this is really something that you need to look at. And I don't think she would have considered it so upfront, but for me, you can use astrology in so many ways.
Yes.
And I come from a healer's background. I'm a healer, and astrology to me is a tool for self-discovery, but mostly for healing. So I use it, like Lilith, Chiron particularly, to really look where do your problems stem from, and then really trying to go deep and not searching around for so long and not finding the, you know, the thread.
Something you spoke about recently was about the Chiron energy and that wounded healer energy, and that's coming over the last couple of years, which for me is the empath, is the empath, the natural healer, those of us that may learn to use our tools in lots of varying ways, whether they're nurses, whether they're hands-on healers, whether they're coaches or therapists, or, you know, whatever. And then coupled in with this Lilith energy, I think particularly those of us who do come in on that natural empath vibration, who come in on that more emotional female vibration, and like I said, men can absolutely hold that vibration as well, depending on their own personal personality and makeup. It's a massive shift for many of us, which like you said the other day, it looks like it started a couple of years ago and has come in so much more strongly over the last few months with the Lilith being layered in.
Yeah. What I find interesting about Chiron, he has quite a special orbit, and he moves between Saturn and Uranus. And we've been talking about Saturn and Uranus before, right?
Yeah.
Saturn is the ruler of our 3D world, and Uranus is his father who wants to go beyond. And if Chiron marches right between them, then to me, this wound is also has got a spiritual connotation, like where is our 3D wound? Where is our human wound? And where are our spiritual wounds? So what wounds keep us from moving into the higher realms? So it's very much about this edge, about this passing point, this transition.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating stuff how these two figures, when we were speaking the other day, really sung out to me so strongly. And they're figures that I was aware of, but again, it's really understanding them in the way that you do, which is fascinating, and interpreting them as individuals. And I think that that's really important when we look at the planets, is to understand that they have personalities. They have in the same way that I look at a crystal, and a crystal has a personality, for me, looking at a planet and understanding its influence over not just yourself, but over, everyone, is really important in that connection, is seeing those planets as the individuals that they are.
Yeah. And they can in your chart, they can represent an outer person, like a father, mother, or someone else who has pushed your buttons, who represents this energy, or it is part of your inner team, because what happens, whatever comes at us in a young age, we internalize it, so it becomes our own. A critic, the one who's always scared, the one who knows it better, and so forth.
Yeah.
So you can also work with the planets and the different placements in, like, okay, what part of me is represented here?
Yeah.
And where is this certain part of me wounded? And where does it have good connections to other internal parts? And how can we how can we do the integration work? And this is where the Gestalt comes in very well, in my opinion, because integration work is a big part of Gestalt, like first externalizing conflicts, but then not just looking at it, but really trying to bring it together by, bringing two elements, two internal parts into a dialogue, for example, and see what they have to say to each other.
Absolutely. And again, that comes then back to the communication and how important it is that women and empaths are empowered in their words, in being able to vocalize what they think and what they feel. And what's really important for empaths to realize is that we may be used to putting ourselves on the back burner, and that isn't helping anyone. That isn't helping society. Actually, we have a very balanced opinion. We have an opinion where we can see both people's perspectives. And if we can't see the other person's perspective, we've got the ability to do that quite easily. So actually, by opening our mouths and saying that's made me unhappy, or why did you react like that, or we need to talk about this, however it is that you're going to address something, opening up the dialogue, allowing you to see the other person's perspective and come to that middle ground that you need to, is very, very powerful. And we have got a massive tool for resolving conflicts, not just with ourselves and with others, but between other people as well. So the more an empath and this wounded healer and the wounded female, the Chiron and the Lilith within many of us steps back and goes, well, I'm just going to send out healing. Spirit has to act through somebody. And if you send out healing, actions have to happen somewhere. And if you're sending out healing, what you're doing is you're asking somebody else to speak for you. You're asking somebody else to take on that burden. And I think what's really interesting is that sometimes when we act irrationally, as we were saying earlier, why sometimes are we so triggered? And I think over the last couple of weeks, for me, it's been this: we need to start speaking, we need to start making direct action, direct change. And that isn't the same as aggression. We need to start changing our behavior. And when we don't do that, it gets lumped out on other people and it gets thrown out. And we pick up on that and we feel that, particularly if we're empaths and particularly if we're healers, we feel that. And those times when we snap at people we love, or, you know, we snap at some stranger in the street, it's because we're not just feeling ours, we're feeling everyone's. So the more that healers actually decide to not just send out healing, but to practically change their reality. So, you know, by saying, I mean, I had somebody who criticized my parenting skills over my autistic child having a meltdown the other day. And it wasn't approached in a sensitive manner. It wasn't, it was an aggressive way. It was very judgmental. And I stood my ground. My temper was there because I just had a really awful incident with my child, had 3 kids, and it wasn't, you know, it was a really difficult situation. And to have somebody coming in an attacking manner, everything went up. The hairs on the back of my neck went up. All of my fight came out, especially around my children. That's when my fight comes out. And so I really did a good job of holding it together and telling her that actually what you've just done has been really, really unhelpful. If you want to come and help, come and help. Don't come up and address me in the way that you've addressed me. You know, if the next time you see, you know, somebody having a child with an autistic meltdown, you need to approach this in a different way. And reminding her herself that next time she has an issue with her own child, if she needs to think about whether or not this situation was actually helpful. And if she had a stranger approaching her in the same way, would it be helpful? She didn't really have a lot to say back to me during the exchange. I think it was difficult for her because her ego had clearly been triggered, and she was clearly somebody who was used to saying what she needed to say, feeling right and not feeling wrong. And because I approached it in a way which she didn't expect, which was neither aggression nor passive, it was the balance in the middle. She didn't not quite know what to do with it. And in the end, I had to tell her to go away. Her sheer presence was just was too much for me. I had to literally say to her, you need to walk away now. Now you need to go. And for me, I could feel all of those other women who felt judged and not said anything. All of those other women who have struggled with their children in many different ways and need help and not judgment. All of those women who haven't said anything, or they've gone home and they've cried, which, you know, hands up, I cried the whole way home in the car. But all of that's what I felt in that moment. I knew that that's what I was connecting into. I knew that that's what was coming up for me. And if I hadn't said anything, I wouldn't have changed my reality. I wouldn't have, you know, her reality and my reality clashed in that moment. She decided that what I was doing was wrong without trying to understand what the situation was. And hopefully that will make her think that next time something happens, she needs to approach it in another way. She absolutely probably had a passion in her mind and felt that she was defending or helping a child who, you know, she from what she viewed and what she judged. But actually, the position I stood in was really quite balanced, and people aren't used to that. And the more that empaths learn to use their voice, learn to heal that high priestess, heal that wounded warrior, heal that Lilith within themselves, so that they're able to say, rather than being vengeful or spiteful or aggressive, or passive and going away and not saying anything, being in that middle ground is going to allow us to change the world. And for me, it's so important that we do this. This is how we change the world, is by simply speaking. And everything you've been saying about communication, just completely, yeah, it's amazing.
I have found that it's very much about widening our window of tolerance, and then all the things we've been speaking about kind of come together. We're talking trauma. Now, what happens in a trauma? We are still hurt animals.
Mm-hmm.
If one says there's a problem, there's a danger, everyone goes on high alert.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we manage to contain more ourselves, contain more the stress in our environment, this is peace work in its core, because we don't fuel the fight and flight and the fight and flight dynamic any further. And then co-regulation comes in. So when we manage to be balanced, then the other, doesn't get triggered further. I mean, she was triggered anyway, but you don't
absolutely
put fuel into the oil. And this is what makes the dynamic so highly explosive a lot of times and so difficult to handle. So people who have managed, either have it naturally, which are rare, or who have managed to widen their window of tolerance in their balance area, they are a blessing. And they also bring us, there is the Paulie Vega theory, which is part of trauma healing. And basically they say our natural state, it's like on a green traffic light, the green state is connection. So when we feel connected, when we manage to re-establish connection, there is no need for threat anymore, because we as mammals, we need, and particularly with our culture and being born early in this, we need the group. So also what you were saying, I think it's very important how much mothers have been isolated and not feeling help from the community. They say you need a whole village to raise a child, and this is so very true. And we need to get back to there, because we think it's our fault if we don't manage to raise our children better, give them more. But that's not our natural state. So let's get back to particularly women, they need to be in society, in the group, with each other, with other women, to raise the children, or just create this safe space where we are connected.
I absolutely agree with that. It's interesting because it's come up recently with some help with one of my children around actually nighttime bedwetting, and the specialist saying a child is raised by a village, and in this day and age that village means everyone needs to be on board, the school needs to be on board. We have to layer up the help that she receives, because I can't manage it by myself if I'm not getting the support from the school during the daytime, because we need to help her in a whole load of ways during the time, which is going to help her at night. And if it's your mum or a family member or a friend, you can say to them, I need her to drink all day, because if she doesn't, I'm not getting her to basically her kidneys won't mature and her bladder won't mature. And that's what she needs to do, is to drink all day, because that family member or that loved one is going to know, oh yeah, like that's an issue. That nighttime thing is an issue. It's an issue for the child's confidence and a whole load of other stuff. The school gets to see the child during the day, and there isn't necessarily that connection that actually they're caring for and nurturing very, very young children. That actually, it's not particularly natural for them to be away from people who love them and who care for them and who they know and who they feel safe with. So it's really important that schools take on board that nurturing and care. And many teachers and many schools get that right. It doesn't happen across the board. We know that. We know there are massive problems with our education system as it stands. But, this village idea is really important. And what we end up doing is plugging the gaps and then feeling guilty about plugging the gaps with childcare and with nannies and with nurseries. And actually, that's natural. That's absolutely what we would do. You would leave the person, if you were in a big community, the person in the next hut would have your child if you were going out hunting or foraging or whatever it is that day. That's absolutely the way that it would work. So if your neighbour looks after your child for a few hours, or you go off and do something, or you find a nursery or a childminder that you love and who your kids love. And I always remember looking at nurseries and them talking about all of the educational stuff, and I was like, I just want my kid to be happy here. What I want is for my child to be loved and accepted. And two nurseries that my children went to over the years, they've had that. They've absolutely been loved and nurtured and accepted and cared for, and spent years within that environment before they went to school, which is the idea, is that you don't want it to swap and change too often. You want them to feel safe and happy within that environment. And that's natural. It's natural for us to reach out. It's just that that exchange nowadays is made by money, and we're not. That money exchange is probably where the unnaturalness comes in. But yet we're made to feel guilty for reaching out to the community, which is absolutely what we're meant to do.
Yeah, and feeling guilty for not being able to be a village for our children. We're just one person. I mean, it's not possible.
It's absolutely not possible. And you think about the communities that my grandparents lived in, those small little tight-knit communities where my dad used to come home and go and sit in a neighbour's after school because my nan worked full-time, and the next door neighbour was an old gent and an old woman. My dad used to go in there after school every day, and they would give him his supper. And then when my nan came home at God knows what time, she used to work 2 jobs, he would come in with her, and they'd go to bed. So that was very normal and very natural. And there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves for not being perfect mothers, when actually what we expect is very, very, very unnatural.
Yeah. And also something else just came to my mind. I've lived over the years in different neighborhoods. And I found the richer the neighborhood was, the less you would see the kids on the street, the less you would see people talking to each other in the streets. So with this wealth seems to come almost a judgment of being out in the street, and this social interaction. They more go into their bubble, their isolation. This is my home, this is my castle, and you go elsewhere. And I found that so hard. My children in one neighborhood, they were the only ones playing in the streets. You could hear them miles, because there was, it was totally silent in this neighborhood. I found it horrific, because I still grew up with lots of children around, and we would meet up and we would have this community. And I really miss this, to have it like here.
It's really interesting, because the last house that I was in, all the neighbours that I had, I got on with really well. And actually the neighbours moved quite quickly in that house next door, but every single one, apart from the first one who, thank you universe, they moved out quite quickly. That might have been, we were there 7 years and everyone else was there just over 2 years, say. Everyone was someone where you could say, can I get a lift off you? Can you give me a lift? I'll give you a lift. Can you look after my daughter for half an hour while I take my son into the doctors, or whatever it was? We had those relationships where we could do that. Where when I first moved in, one of the other neighbours, I was heavily pregnant, said, if you need me in the middle of the night, I'd literally just moved in. He was like, knock on the door. When I had my second child, if you need me again, knock on the door. And I barely knew these people. We were so lucky. So when we were moving, I did set some very unwritten intents about neighbours, and I've got it here where I am now. It's brilliant. One side we've got a lovely couple who have got grandchildren and who chat and bring over donuts for the kids and chat in the street and all of that sort of stuff. Have the kids over into the garden, and then the other side there's children the same age as my children, and then we do the swaps and the shares and the sticking them in each other's gardens for the afternoon. That stuff's so important. And the more, particularly as women, we fail to see that community and next door neighbors and all of that real stuff is actually what empowers us. The longer we fail to see that, the longer we're disabling ourselves. We need to like stop apologizing for being human. We need to stop apologizing for not functioning as robots, and start living as we're supposed to. I'm just going to have a quick skim through some of the comments. Hi Jackie, hi Siobhan, hi Angela. Siobhan said the moons have been affecting her a lot lately. I will say it's interesting, over the last probably couple of years the moons have been affecting me more, which is interesting with that Chiron energy. So I wouldn't mind like trying to figure it out and working out if it fits in with that. Standing in your power, yeah, and it doesn't have to be aggression, it just is that gravity, Siobhan, that directness. Jackie's agreed she was shocked by the difference in neighborhoods that she's lived in. And actually, Angela, not just African communities, but there are lots of other communities, probably all over the world, where we haven't lost what we've lost, certainly in this country. And I would think probably in the States, if anyone's in the States is watching and seeing that deterioration in community. I think that the British stiff upper lip is a massive curse when it comes to all of that stuff. And Angela said, yeah, we think we have to be superheroes. Yeah, we do, and we're not, and we forget that. And I think that's a really important point, is that we still feel that oneness, and we're still connected into that energy, and we think we can do everything that our energy tells us we can do, and we can. It's just not alone, it's as a mass. And I think that that's a really important distinction for us to probably make in our heads, that we're not the oneness. We're not the whole. We are just this individual stuck in this very human body. But a lot of that comes down to the groundedness, and a lot of the work that Sabine was talking about in terms of shadow work and all of that stuff. If we don't do that stuff, we're never going to be grounded into our bodies enough, and we're never going to really understand what it means to be human and to do all of this stuff in a very real way. Recently, I used to accept the behavior, I started to speak up. Yeah, and it's tough when you first start doing it, but I think when you approach it from a point where you used to be passive, it actually makes it really quite effective, because we approach it in a different way. Right, I think we're probably done. Sabine, have you anything else to add before I close out?
I just think Lilith is very much about boundaries. So what she just said, speaking up and pushing back, like putting the boundaries into their right space again.
Yeah.
Well, we've been used to misplaced boundaries for so long that a lot of times we don't realize they are misplaced.
Yes.
So yeah, we won't do without aggression, or aggression in the Gestalt sense, in a neutral sense, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And I guess also the COVID situation will have made us more aware of our social nature, how much we need to be touched, how much we need to talk to others, not just through the screen, but in person.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anything positive we can take from, these 1.5 years, then I guess it will be a heightened awareness of that we really need each other.
Yeah. Boundaries and community. I love that closing thought. Boundaries and community. Absolutely. Thank you everybody for watching. You're welcome, Siobhan. She has corrected. She does mean time at the bottom. Thank you, Angela. You know where to find Sabine if you want to book in a reading. And I'm obviously available. I'm quite booked up over the next couple of weeks with workshops and things. We still have a look on the events page. There is a lot of workshops that I've got coming up, and there is still a handful of places on some of them. Thank you, Jackie. So you know where to find both of us. should you need to. But I'd highly recommend Sabine because her readings come from a very grounded place, and they're empowering. They take you forward, and it's made everything a lot easier for me. So I'd highly recommend her work. You're amazing, seriously amazing. Right. I'm going to wrap up for this evening. If anyone's on catch up or when I upload this onto YouTube, again, please pop your comments on it. It's always lovely to hear what you've taken from the evening and all of that stuff. So we'll see you all later. Bye-bye. Bye.